just rolled right in, like you said, with his own controversial pardons. I think the most controversial one you're talking about is the January 6th.
Sure.
Pardons. Now, he did campaign basically saying he was going to do this, call these people hostages and things like that. He's let out 1,500 people.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by White House reporter Haisten Willis. Haisten, Donald Trump is back at office.
That's right.
So even though he's lived in the White House before, now that he's returned, there's a little bit of redecorating going on in the Oval. Talk a little bit about that.
Definitely, major redecorating. Yeah, one thing people are always interested in when you get a new president is what have they changed around inside the White House? And a lot of those areas really don't change that much in the West Wing. They'll put new pictures on the wall and things like that. But a big thing that presidents do get to personalize a good bit and tend to personalize a lot is the Oval Office. People always want to see, okay, what have they redone with the Oval Office? Sometimes this does mean changing the colors of the drapes and things like that, but a lot of times you'll see what a president believes, or kind of expressed himself through what they do, who they put on the walls, how they decorate, that kind of thing. So there's been a lot of interesting changes in that regard. Trump has reinstated a picture of Andrew Jackson, for example. It's one of his favorite presidents from the early 1800s, actually, but Trump really idolizes this guy. Had a picture of him there in the first Trump administration. Biden took it out. It's back. So Trump really likes Andrew Jackson. He'll be seeing him now every day inside the Oval Office. Another interesting change that Trump made, again, kind of going back to philosophy, is that Biden had placed in the most prominent position inside the Oval Office a big picture of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There had been a giant picture of George Washington up in this position for the last, I think, 9 presidential administrations. Biden changed it to FDR. That was really interesting because supposedly Biden saw himself, or was told to see himself, as sort of like a new FDR. FDR came into office amid crisis, the Great Depression, and Biden came in amid crisis, being the pandemic. So anyway, that's who Biden looked at for 4 years, was this big picture of FDR, who he tried to emulate, supposedly. Sure. So George Washington is back in that spot the way it was ever since the 60s. He's back there. A couple other questions, a couple other changes that he made, or he put the what's called the Reagan rug back in the Oval Office, and a few other changes like that. So anyway, Trump is now back in, and he's put his own touch on the Oval Office.
But no William McKinley, who Trump has begun referencing quite a lot, and no Grover Cleveland, who he's emulated in the way of having non-consecutive terms.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that because Trump, interestingly, he does talk about old presidents a lot, not necessarily old like in the 70s like Nixon. He talks about guys from way, way back. People don't even know who they are probably a lot of times.
Right.
Andrew Jackson.
Millard Fillmore.
And definitely McKinley. Yeah, William McKinley is kind of the way he says it. He did direct now the name of the big mountain in Alaska. They've changed that to Denali. In the Obama administration, he wants it to be called Mount McKinley again. So that was his nod to McKinley. But you're right, there's no McKinley in the Oval Office. I don't know why that is, but we do have Jackson.
And ironic that Biden got rid of Jackson because Jackson was a Democratic president.
Oh yeah. I don't think Democrats are a big fan of him anymore.
Right,
he was known for causing the Trail of Tears, of course. But yeah, he was very Trump-like. He was opposed by the presidents that came before him. Very fiery figure, unafraid to stir things up. But after he came to power, he was able to basically select the Democratic nominee after himself until he died. Look at a column about this actually by our own Michael Barone, kind of comparing Trump to Andrew Jackson. You can see why Trump admires the guy, because they do have a lot of similarities. But yeah, he was a Democrat for better or worse.
So there's been a wave of pardons. There was a wave of pardons at the end of Biden's administration and at the beginning of Trump's administration. And you've written about one controversial pardon, or I guess 2 controversial pardons of D.C. police officers. What was that? What did that case involve?
Yeah, like you said, a lot of controversial pardons over the last month or so, starting with, of course, the Hunter Biden pardon that Joe Biden signed, and then Biden added a whole bunch of family right there on that left at the end. He pardoned 2 of his brothers, his sister, I think some of his family members' spouses even got pardoned, so that was controversial. And then, yeah, Trump just rolled right in, like you said, with his own controversial pardons. I think the most controversial one you're talking about is the January 6th pardons. Now, he did campaign basically saying he was going to do this, call these people hostages and things like that. He's let out 1,500 people, and some of them did basically assault officers on January the 6th. So that's been pretty controversial. Trump's defense of this is basically, well, he's got two defenses. One is that these people have been in jail for basically 4 years. That's a really, really long time to be in jail, even for a serious offense of assault. But then, I guess to kind of show how he really does, he says, love police. He has pardoned two D.C. parole officers who were convicted. One of them actually was convicted of murder in 2020. It was the first time a D.C. police officer had ever been convicted of murder. It was, again, 2020. This was a Black Lives Matter protest days. And the case basically was there was a guy who was on a scooter going down the sidewalk, didn't have a helmet. A lot of the details are sort of disputed, depends on who you're talking to. But the police pursued him for a few minutes. He ended up getting into an accident and dying. That led to a lot of new protests. And again, those are kind of heady days for this type of movement. And those officers both got jail sentences. Anyway, so Trump has pardoned them on the premise that this is showing his love for police officers.
Yeah, and he argues that they were wrongfully convicted. But
He does, yeah, of course, yeah, he does. And interestingly, so the D.C. Police Union was involved with this. They said they worked with the White House on securing these pardons. But in the same statement, they condemned some of the January 6th pardons. So you see it's very direct, where they're upset about the January 6th pardons, but then they get their own two officers a pardon as well.
We'll have to see who gets pardoned next.
We will see, yeah.
Thank you, Haisten. You could read Haisten and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.